The dim yellow light from the kitchen corner cast blotchy shadows on the ceiling. The silence was so deep that the ticking of the wall clock felt like a hammer striking my temples. The house that was once warm and bustling now felt eerily quiet, as if holding back a secret about to explode. I set my suitcase down on the floor, still hadn't taken off my shoes. My eyes swept across the living room, the faded beige curtains, the old armchair Grandpa used to sit in now empty. I called out softly, Grandpa, no response. The rustle of a newspaper from the kitchen made me flinch. I stepped toward it, unease creeping into my chest. Then I saw him sitting silently at the dining table, his frail shoulders swallowed by a worn-out sweater. In front of him sat a slice of white bread with peanut butter and a glass of water. No oven warmth. No scent of food. No voices. Just him, and an emptiness so heavy it stole the air from the room. He looked up when he saw me. His clouded eyes lit with a hint of warmth, mixed with something quietly hurt, quietly relieved. "Zoe, you're home." I forced a smile, trying to mask the storm inside my chest. I couldn't remember the last time he looked so fragile. "Yeah. I came straight from the airport." "Where are Mom and Dad?" He slowly lifted his hand, pointing at the refrigerator. On the door was a note stuck with a broken heart-shaped magnet. "Took your money for Tyler. Please watch him this week. We're enjoying the Bahamas." "Mom and Dad," I froze. "Tyler, my younger brother." "The Bahamas." And the phrase, "took your money." I pulled the note off and read it again, as if the words might change under a second glance. "What is this, Grandpa?" He trembled slightly, tapping the table, gesturing to the empty chair across from him. "Sit down, Zoe. I think you should know." I sat, my stomach twisting. "They emptied my savings account, the one I've been building for years." He nodded, unable to meet my eyes. My breath caught. I bit my lip hard. How much? He hesitated. "Around $18,000. My heart slammed against my chest. That wasn't a small amount. That was everything I had saved since I turned 20, every paycheck from long nurse shifts, every dinner skipped to save. I'd planned to use it for student loan repayments next year. When did they do this? Why didn't you call me?" He placed his hand over mine, giving it a gentle squeeze. "I didn't want to worry you. I thought it was temporary." "That's what they told you, yeah. They said Tyler got into trouble. Some debt. Said it needed a quick rescue." I scoffed. Tyler was always the emergency. Last time I saw him was last Christmas. He showed up late, eyes, bloodshot, rambling nonsense, and my mom still pulled out the chair for him, first poured him orange juice, gave him extra rice. Meanwhile, I got told not to be moody because I worked too much. I stood up and opened the fridge. There was nothing except half a bottle of ketchup, a few stuck-together cheese slices in plastic wrap, and 2 loaves of bread going stale. I turned to Grandpa. "How long have you been eating like this? 3 days?" "They left you home alone. No meds, no food, and left a note." He shook his head gently. "I can't cook anymore, Zoe. My hands are weak, and the stove's hard to light." I thought Tyler would help. I walked to the pantry. My hands were trembling. Emotions burst out. I slammed the counter, tears falling without warning. They'd gone too far. I wasn't crying about the money. I cried for my grandfather, the man who once carried me through snowstorms to school when my mom overslept. The man who fixed every light bulb, every leaky valve in my first apartment. The only one in this family who ever asked if I was happy. I bent down and wrapped my arms around him. He shook like a dry branch caught in a cold wind. "It's okay, Grandpa. I'll handle this. But this time I'm not letting it slide." In that cold kitchen, under that flickering light, and the hollowness gnawing in my belly, I made a quiet vow, one only I could hear. I would set things right, even if I had to face my entire family. I sat in the old wooden chair by the kitchen window, once filled with laughter, on holidays now echoing, only the dry wind knocking against the glass. Grandpa's hand trembled as he stirred a lukewarm cup of tea, while I stared at the bank statement on my phone. $18,000. Gone without a word. I remembered every single deposit I made into that account, labeled Zoe Future Fund. a name my mom once came up with. Back then, I believed in it. At 16, I took a job at the Glendale grocery store on Elm Street. After school, I stocked gum and canned meat enduring classmates' snickers as they watched me push carts. They wore Hollister hoodies. I wore a blue uniform with my name, Zoe, stitched in white. I didn't carry lip gloss. I carried spare change from tips carefully earmarked for savings. Tyler, different story. Mom used to say he's still young, let him be himself. At 12, he had the latest Nintendo console. At 14, Dad drove him to drum lessons with a local band's former drummer. At 16, Mom bought him a $3,000 mountain bike while telling me the bus is free, sweetie. I wasn't jealous. Not back then. I thought it was what big sisters were supposed to do. I thought I was doing the right thing. At 17, Mom suggested opening a special account where I could send all my monthly earnings. Don't let banks fool you with fake interest rates. If I keep it, it's safer than a vault. I agreed. $800 a month like clockwork. When I got a partial scholarship to the University of Minnesota for nursing, she told me, don't worry. Whatever you need later, just ask. Your fund is untouched. I believed her. Tyler was expelled from his first high school at 15. They found marijuana in his desk. My mom called the principal sobbing, blaming it on bad friends. My dad showed up to apologize and even donated money to the school's football team as a gesture of goodwill. Tyler transferred twice after that. Each time there was a different excuse: the teachers don't understand me, the school's too strict, I need space to be creative. And each time I heard the door to his future slam shut, but my parents pretended not to notice. I studied day and night. I went from lectures to night shifts at the ER. Broken bones, insulin injections, mopping blood off the floor. Tyler stayed home gaming through the night, yelling into his headset, slamming his desk when he lost. Mom still brought him tea to his room. Dad said the boy just needs time to find himself. I asked how much time is enough. Dad avoided the question. Mom turned to me and said, you always think the worst. Last year, I moved out. A small apartment in Minneapolis. No balcony, but it had a window overlooking a patch of grass. I paid my own rent, electric bill, internet. Every time I got a tuition deduction notice, I'd sigh, but I believed my savings were still waiting for me. Then today, seeing my grandfather eat dry bread, hearing the refrigerator screech from old age, seeing that flimsy note stuck next to a faded family photo, I understood they never meant to keep their word. Does Tyler know? I asked. He didn't say anything to me. He stopped by yesterday asking for gas money, but I said no. Haven't seen him since. I got up and walked to his room. Everything looked like it had on Christmas. The blanket pulled up carelessly, headphones tossed on the desk, the closet cracked open. I pulled it wide. Leather jacket, Jordan sneakers, a brand new laptop. An iPhone box, still sealed, sat in the corner. Inside the drawer, buried among receipts and torn magazines, I found a small plastic case with blister packs of pills, a bag of white powder, and a crumpled piece of foil. No mistake. I set the box down and turned to Grandpa, who stood in the doorway, his eyes exhausted. Have you ever seen this before? He shook his head. I whispered, almost afraid the house might hear me. Grandpa Tyler's in serious trouble. This isn't just about money. It's something deeper. And I think Mom and Dad know it. The silence grew heavy. He stepped forward and gently took my hand. They think they're protecting him, but really they're destroying him. I nodded, feeling something crack inside. That fragile belief that if I just did everything right, things would turn out okay. I looked around the house that used to be a sanctuary where I studied in Grandpa's lap every night. Now, it was just the empty shell of broken promises. $18,000. Not as painful as 18 years of trusting the wrong people. I pulled up my banking app, scrolled through the transactions. Every withdrawal listed one authorizer, Karen Doyle, my mother. Each line felt like a blade slicing into the surface of trust. No permission. No phone call. Not even a pause. Just action. I took a long breath. Grandpa, I'm going to do what I should have done a long time ago. What's that, Zoe? Find out everything they've done. And start over with the truth in my hands. I walked out of the room, my chest heavy. But somewhere inside the chaos, I knew I was finally headed in the right direction. I stepped out onto the back porch for air, but the cold only tightened my throat. The sun hadn't fully set yet. The motion sensor light flickered like a silent warning. Grandpa sat in the living room, his gaze drifting between the bulb and the sliver of light stretching through the window, cold light brushing over his wrinkled cheeks and trembling hands. I went to the drawer beneath the landline, the one where Grandpa kept his pills and medication chart. I opened it and froze. No meds inside. No heart pills, no Parkinson's meds, no pill organizer. I turned around, heart thudding like it was being pressed underwater. Grandpa, did you take your pills this morning? I don't have any left. Yesterday, Tyler said he'd go to the pharmacy. But then, his voice trailed off. He borrowed my car. When yesterday morning. And he hasn't come back. He nodded, trying to hide the worry with a faint smile. Maybe he's just busy. I pulled out my phone, called Tyler. Straight to voicemail. Second try, same thing. I texted him. No delivery checkmark. His phone was probably off. The doorbell rang with a soft knock. I answered it. On the porch was Emps. Ruby, our next-door neighbor, holding a trash bag and a magazine. Zoe, you're back. Oh, thank goodness. I blinked a little, thrown off. Hi, Ems. Ruby. Is everything okay? She glanced inside, then leaned in, whispering. Did you know there have been at least 3 parties here since Wednesday? I frowned. Parties? Oh, yes. Cars lining the curb, music blasting like it was a club. I called your mother, but she brushed it off, said, the boy needs to blow off steam. She enunciated those last few words with visible disgust. I quietly thanked her and closed the door, my mind spinning. Upstairs, I opened Tyler's bedroom door. The sharp scent of vape and stale sweat hit me instantly. The room looked like a miniature electronics store, high-end headphones, oversized monitors, a PC case flashing with LED lights. But what made me freeze was his desk corner. A small, torn Ziploc bag, a scorched metal spoon, a cut straw. Next to them sat a palm-sized digital scale and a plastic container holding several unmarked green pills. There was no more doubt. The closet door was slightly ajar. Inside hung clothes still with tags Nike, Off-White, Supreme. A pair of limited edition Jordan sneakers rested on a velvet box. Altogether worth at least several $1,000s by my estimate. I sat on the edge of the bed trying to steady my breath. The light flickered once. I heard Grandpa's voice calling from downstairs. Zoe, I ran down. He was teetering near the sink, his right hand twitching, eyes filled with tears. I'm dizzy. My head is spinning. I grabbed his arm and guided him to the chair. You need your meds now. We're going to the pharmacy. I reached into my purse for the car keys, empty. Tyler had taken them. I grabbed the landline and called an express ride service. 10 minutes later, I helped Grandpa to the car. By the time it arrived, he was gasping. Each step looked like climbing a freezing mountain. In the car, his eyes closed, sweat beading on his forehead despite the air-conditioned interior. The pharmacy opened late because it was Friday. I explained urgently, handing over his old prescription. The pharmacist glanced at him, nodded, filled the order, and rang it up. I paid with my card, my chest tight like someone was ringing it. Back home, I heated up a can of soup and placed it in front of him. I won't let this happen again. Leaving you like this is unacceptable. He didn't respond. He just quietly held the spoon, trembling like a child. I opened my laptop and logged into my bank account. The transactions spilled down the screen. Regular transfers to a secondary account under the name Karen Doyle for 3 months straight. The most recent 4 days ago. A withdrawal of over $9,000 right after I deposited the final part of my savings. Each transaction was labeled Internal Transfer Linked Account. Linked user, my mother. I shut the laptop. My eyes burned. The back door creaked again. I turned on the light, stepped outside. No one. But something was off. A trail of mud led from the porch to the wooden shed. I followed it. Opened the door. Nothing but some toolboxes, a bag of fertilizer, and Tyler's half-zipped backpack. Inside it, a thick roll of cash bound with rubber bands and a few plastic bottles with cut bottoms. Stuffed in with the cash was a crumpled piece of paper. Scribbled in marker, "Don't tell Mom and Dad." "I'm trying." I clenched the paper in my hand. Whatever Tyler was trying to do, it wasn't recovery. It was digging deeper into a hole, while the whole family poured money, energy, and hope in to cover it. But holes don't fill with illusions. A police siren howled in the distance. I stood still, the paper still in my hand. Every sound was a drumbeat pushing me to act. Tyler was evaporating piece by piece. And if I didn't intervene, there'd be nothing left to salvage. The living room window cast thin rays of sunlight, highlighting specks of dust, floating like the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to collapse. I sat on the floor back against Grandpa's old bookcase laptop on my lap screen filled with numbers. My account, once a shield of financial trust, had been drained over months, not by a single blow, but by countless silent cuts. And the hand holding the knife, my mother. I pulled up the detailed transaction list. 300 in November, 450 at Christmas, 800 in January. Right when I was buried in my thesis and not checking balances. The biggest hit, $9,100, vanished 3 days before I came home. Even the timing felt calculated, like they waited for me to turn away. I checked Grandpa's bank account next to the one I'd helped him set up for his retirement deposits. The password was still Hummingbird 1945, Grandma's favorite bird. After two-step verification, the interface appeared. One retirement deposit stood out. A large withdrawal labeled Home Improvement Kitchen Remodeling for $29,800 paid to a company called Brightstone Interiors. I had never seen that name on any invoice in this house. The kitchen still had cracked laminate counters and chipped oak cabinets. Not a trace of renovation. "Grandpa, did you hire anyone to redo the kitchen recently?" I asked. He looked up from his paper, paused, then shook his head. "Your mom said they'd do it for me. They said using my name helped with credit paperwork. But no one ever came." The words hit like a hammer. "They took your money. Nearly $30,000. Not a word about giving it back." He forced a smile. The kind of smile from someone used to being brushed aside. I asked once. "Your mom said they were pooling money for an investment. It'll double for all of us." But every time I brought it up after that, they changed the subject. I stood up and went to Dad's old study, now used by Mom as a storage room. In a plastic bin of documents, I found copies of mortgage papers. 2 refinancing contracts in less than a year. Both signed by my parents. Total, borrowed over $150,000. Yet there was no sign any of it had gone into actual renovations, upgrades, or real investments. I found a stack of letters from credit card companies. One clearly stated current balance, $47,900. Interest rate, 27.4%. I sat down on the cold wooden floor, pressing my palm against my throbbing temple. They'd been spinning in a whirlpool of debt, borrowing to pay off other loans, then borrowing again to cover the growing hole. And everything they couldn't bear to pay themselves. They drained from me, from Grandpa. I remembered back in high school when Dad took my car in for repairs after Tyler scratched the door, trying to drive just once. A week later, the car returned in worse shape, and I was handed a pointless excuse the mechanic was slow. I later overheard Mom say, "Just use Zoe's scholarship fund. She doesn't need it right away." Sophomore year in college, I won a nursing competition and received a $2,000 prize. Mom beamed, hugging me as if she were proud. 2 weeks later, that money had temporarily disappeared to cover a 3-day rehab program Tyler never even showed up to. I used to think those were clumsy decisions. Now I knew they were part of a lifestyle strategy. The front door clicked softly. I walked out and faced Mrs. Nelson, our retired neighbor who had lived next door since I was in elementary school. Her silver hair was tied neatly and she held a yellow envelope. "I found this in your mailbox this morning," she said. Not sure why it came to my address, but it looked urgent. I took it, thanked her. The front read Karen Doyle, an email address, and the logo of a short-term loan company. Inside was a debt notice, $15,000 with interest compounding daily, if unpaid within 72 hours. Attached was a collateral declaration, an unsecured loan based on stable income from a daughter working in healthcare. My breath caught. They used my job title, credit record, and monthly salary as collateral without my knowledge. I walked back inside, gripping the envelope tightly. Grandpa was still seated, his eyes already reading what I hadn't said. They're sinking the whole family, Zoe, not just sinking it, Grandpa. They punched a hole in the bottom of the boat, then used my hands to bail out the water. He looked at me silent for a moment, then softly said, "We need to do something. Fast." I didn't nod. I just turned back to the computer and started listing what I needed to gather: bank accounts, credit statements, home ownership papers, power of attorney forms, old emails I sent Mom when transferring money, even text messages, brief, but still valuable. Everything was forming a case file. Not for conversation. For confrontation. A number rang clear in my head, then as sharp as a church bell on Sunday morning: $218,000. The amount they had drained from me, from Grandpa. From a future they never truly respected. The ride carrying me and Grandpa veered into the city's edge, where oversized houses stood quiet among manicured lawns and leafless trees. The smell of wet wood lingered on the freshly washed sidewalks, as if the neighborhood was trying to scrub something away. The map confirmed it. The White House at the end of Willow Street was our destination. The door opened after 3 rings. Maxwell, Tyler's old friend, peeked out red-eyed in a wrinkled t-shirt, a dirty smudge down his back. "Zoe..." "What's up?" "Is Tyler here?" Maxwell scratched his head, glancing over his shoulder. "I think he's upstairs." But I didn't wait. I pushed the door open and stepped in. The hallway reeked of stale beer and cheap fruit-flavored vape smoke. The second floor was quiet. I gently pushed open the last door in the hall. Dim purple light glowed from a bedside lamp. In the messy room, Tyler was crouched on the floor, leaning against the wall, eyes barely open, holding a half-empty water bottle. I didn't speak right away. Looking at him like that, I barely recognized him. "Did you hear me calling all day?" Tyler squinted, voice hoarse. "Phone died. I just needed a break. You disappeared for 36 hours, took Grandpa's car, his meds. You call that a break? I didn't mean to. I just needed a few hours to get out." I stood still, then knelt down in front of him. "You're destroying yourself, and you're taking Grandpa down with you. He's been without his medication for almost 2 days. He nearly collapsed from low blood pressure. I didn't think it would get that bad." "You never think. This whole family has done your thinking for you." He turned his face away. I lowered my voice. "I found the unlabeled pills, the scale, the pill bottles. I don't need a doctor to know where you're headed." Tyler took a long breath, resting his head against the wall. "Do you think I want to be like this? I hate waking up and not remembering the night before. I hate the smell of the pills, the emptiness. But I don't know any other way to live." I didn't argue. He was being honest, maybe for the first time. Grandpa entered behind me, leaning against the doorway. "You don't have to live like this, son. There's another way. You just haven't been shown it yet." Tyler dropped his head, burying his face in his hands. "It's too late now." I pulled out my phone, opened the website for Riverstone Recovery Center, and slid the screen toward him. "This place isn't like the others you ran from. No one will yell at you. No ropes. Just doctors, counselors, and one rule: you face the truth. No exits. No lies." Tyler didn't look up. "I don't have any money." "I do. And if needed, Grandpa's willing to sell the house to give you a real chance." That made him flinch. Sell the house? His house? Grandpa sat in the chair across from him. Though his face showed fatigue, his eyes held the one thing that had always made me trust him: unwavering resolve. "That house used to be a home. Now it's just a place that buries memories." I don't need it anymore, but you need a chance." No one spoke for a moment. Just the faint tapping of rain on the window. If I agree when I answered immediately. "As soon as you're ready. But the sooner the better." Tyler gave a slight nod as if fear had just surfaced in his chest. "Give me a day. I need to get things together." I stood up. One day. No more. Outside Maxwell's house, Grandpa pulled his coat collar higher. I don't know if he'll keep his word, but at least it's the first time he's lifted his head in a long while. I didn't answer, but my heartbeat had changed. That night, I started organizing the house transfer paperwork, contacted a lawyer friend in Portland to prepare Grandpa's medical care proxy, and emailed Riverstone with the intake documents. By the time Grandpa was asleep, I stepped out to the back porch. The rain had stopped. Streetlights reflected off the wet ground in a shimmery glaze. I saw my own shadow blur across the concrete, a shadow of someone no longer willing to stand on the sidelines. The next morning, I woke to a text. "Tyler, the car's back. I left the key in the shoe cabinet. I'll be there at 10. 3 simple lines, but they carried the weight of a vow. I looked at the clock. 8:30. Today would be the day that decided everything. Maybe not a day of healing, but the day we pulled the pin on a life stretched to its edge. A day when someone who had nearly disappeared might choose to turn back if he dared. I pulled the file from the drawer. The paperwork was ready. The house would be listed by the end of the week. Grandpa would move into a senior home near me in Portland. And if Tyler followed through, he'd get treatment instead of continuing to run. The sky hadn't fully lightened when the sound of shattering glass came from downstairs. I jumped from the couch, nearly slipping on the blanket that had fallen. The house was dark, but instinct outpaced light. Something had just gone wrong. I rushed down the stairs, hand gripping the wooden railing. The back door was ajar, cold wind slapping my face. The motion sensor light in the yard flickered, illuminating a trail of muddy footprints leading toward the driveway. The medication bag I'd picked up yesterday was gone from the kitchen counter. So was Grandpa's car key, hidden carefully in the third drawer under the sink. I ran to Tyler's room. Empty. The window wide open, curtains flapping in the wind. The desk lamp was knocked over its base, cracking against the floor. I looked up and saw Grandpa frozen in the hallway, one hand clinging to the doorframe, eyes wide in a way that tore into me. He's gone, hasn't he?" I nodded, lips dry. "The car. The meds." He gripped the banister tightly. "Call the police. He's in danger." I grabbed my phone, hands trembling so hard I had to enter the passcode twice. I called dispatch and gave a brief explanation. They logged it and promised to notify patrol units. 30 minutes passed. I called every nearby hospital. Nothing. An hour later, the local police station called back. A young, unidentified male had been admitted to St. Luke's ER, found unconscious in a park restroom near the river by an early morning jogger. I took Grandpa to the hospital by taxi. The road was wet with early mist, windows fogged with condensation. At the reception desk, I gave the name. The nurse checked her system and nodded. "He's in the emergency wing. Still unstable." She led us down a brightly lit hallway that smelled sharply of disinfectant. In a small room at the end of the hall, Connor lay motionless. The heart monitor beeped steadily. An IV was hooked to his left arm. His skin was pale, lips cracked and dry. The doctor stepped out when he saw me. The patient arrived in respiratory failure, hypothermic, with toxic blood levels exceeding the danger threshold. We intubated him and placed him on a ventilator. I nodded softly. Can he recover if there are no liver or kidney complications? Survival is likely. But this was a severe case of polysubstance overdose. I didn't ask more. I just stood there watching the boy who once cried in my lap over a lost stuffed animal now lying in front of me, nearly unrecognizable. Behind me, Grandpa clung to a plastic chair, breathing heavily. His eyes were dull, lips trembling. "What time is it, Zoe?" 6:30. "I'm a little dizzy." I turned to the nurse and asked for a checkup. They transferred Grandpa to the geriatric unit. The doctor confirmed he was exhausted from days without proper medication, meals, or rest. I sat between 2 hospital rooms, One for someone too old to carry the burden anymore, the other for someone too young to bear the weight of his own mistakes. By midday, Connor was moved to recovery. The ventilator was removed, though he was still unconscious. I sat at his bedside, eyes locked on the heart rate monitor. Steady, but slow. By late afternoon, a slight movement in his left hand made me freeze. His eyelids twitched. A faint groan. I stood leaning close. "It's me, Zoe. Can you hear me?" He gave a tiny nod, lips moving without sound. "You're in the hospital. You were found in time." A tear slid across his pale cheek. I didn't mean to." The sentence broke off. I placed my hand over his. "You still have a chance. But next time, if this continues, there won't be a miracle." His eyes closed. He gripped my hand, weak but real. That night, I called Riverstone to confirm a direct transfer from the hospital. They agreed, provided a physician's approval and diagnosis. The next morning, Grandpa was also moved to a quieter recovery room with a window facing a small garden. He looked noticeably thinner. But when I told him about Connor, he closed his eyes and exhaled. Maybe hitting bottom is what he needed. Now he can start climbing. I couldn't believe it just yet. But I saw something in my brother's eyes, a faint light I thought had long gone out. A light that without someone to guard it would never ignite again. The sharp sound of high heels echoed down the hospital hallway like a declaration. I turned and saw my mother, Karen Doyle, step in, wearing a floral summer dress, a Coach handbag hooked on her elbow, and perfectly teased dark blonde hair. Right behind her was my father, Dennis, still wearing a hotel spa neck wrap. "Zoe, what have you done?" my mother gasped, like I'd just crashed a car into a church. "Where's Connor?" we heard from a nurse. "Please tell me he didn't get into more trouble." I folded my arms, planting myself in front of the ICU room. "No, not this time." This time it was nearly dying from a synthetic drug overdose after stealing Grandpa's medication. My mother caught her breath. His medication and his car. While he was under-medicated, exhausted, and admitted to the hospital. "You should have kept an eye on him. He's trying to change. You know that." I gripped the strap of my purse, fighting to keep my voice level. "No, Mom. I've warned you. Connor doesn't need a babysitter, he needs a treatment plan. Something neither of you ever gave him." My father stepped up, trying for calm. "Come on now, we all want what's best. Your mother's been stressed from the vacation, and you vacation," I cut in, locking eyes with him. "The one you used my college fund to pay for while Grandpa ate stale bread for 3 days. My mother paled. "That money belonged to the family. We borrowed it. You weren't using it right away." I pulled out a folder, laying down documents one by one on the side table: bank statements, withdrawal slips, credit loan papers, and invoices from Brightstone Interiors for a kitchen remodel that never happened. Every transaction has your name. Every dollar either became debt or indulgence. Grandpa lost almost 30 grand from his retirement account for a kitchen that doesn't exist. Don't blow this out of proportion, Zoe. You're making people think the wrong things about our family." Her voice trembled, but her eyes still refused to face the truth. "What they think doesn't matter as much as what's happened." I pulled a notarized copy from my bag. "This is the legal agreement Grandpa signed, giving me full control over his finances, property, and medical care. Signed by his lawyer and physician." She stepped back half a pace. "You can't just make decisions like that. Your father and I are still alive. That's exactly why I must. Being alive without being responsible doesn't count as care." Footsteps clicked behind us. I turned. Whitney, my supervisor from Portland Children's Hospital, was walking toward us with steady confidence. "Sorry to interrupt. I'm Whitney Marks, Zoe's emergency leave supervisor." My mother switched tones instantly. "Hello. Our family is just working through a misunderstanding." Whitney nodded curtly. "I'm here due to concerns of elder financial abuse and neglect. As a healthcare worker, I'm mandated to report suspected cases. I've compiled evidence and submitted it to the State Legal Protection Office." My father stepped in, smiling nervously. "Is that really necessary? We're just a little overwhelmed." Being overwhelmed doesn't explain leaving your elderly father without medication or food or your son nearly dying from a drug overdose while you're tagging deserged away from a resort, I replied calm, but razor sharp. My mother clutched her purse tighter. We didn't realize it had gotten this bad. No, you didn't want to realize. You chose to look away. Silence. Then she asked, as if clinging to the last life raft, "So, what do you want?" I pulled out a financial plan from my folder. Full legal repayment of the college fund. No more access to Grandpa's accounts. All property and bank documentation will be under my oversight. Connor will enter rehab under professional monitoring. My father sighed. And if we don't agree, then elder abuse and asset misuse will be reported to the police within 24 hours. Whitney nodded, phone in hand, already recording. No one spoke. In that moment, I no longer saw parents. Just two adults too far down the road of denial. Connor didn't need one more excuse. Grandpa didn't need another forgotten meal. And I didn't need to keep pretending we were a family that took care of each other. I looked them both straight in the eyes one final time. From now on, either change or stay out of my life. You choose. The glass doors of Riverstone reflected Connor's pale face as he stepped out of the car. He wore a gray hoodie, sleeves pulled long over his wrists. His eyes were still slightly swollen but open, and no longer blank. I stood beside him, holding a folder with documents, insurance, and medical records. The morning wind rustled the pine trees around the center, whispering something too quiet to name. "Ready?" I asked. Connor looked up at the sign, Riverstone Recovery and Mental Health Center. His eyes met the smaller words underneath. You don't have to do it alone. He took a deep breath. I'm not sure I can do this. You don't have to be sure. You just have to be willing to walk in. He gave a slight nod, then followed me through the door. A receptionist named Grace greeted us with a warm, judgment-free tone. They brought him in for an initial checkup, signed the consent forms, and then transferred him to the residential program for 30 days. I wasn't allowed to go in with him. Right before the steel doors shut, Connor turned around to look at me. He didn't say anything, just a small nod, not forced but firm. I sat in the parking lot a few more minutes. Staring at the red brick building, I felt like I had just placed a tangled part of my life somewhere temporarily safe. Maybe not for long, but long enough to breathe. That afternoon, I met my parents again in the office of attorney Patrick Sullivan, whom I'd contacted earlier. The room was filled with natural light, an oak desk, and a thick stack of documents, neatly arranged in the corner. My dad wore a buttoned-up shirt without a tie. My mom sat upright, handbag tight against her foot like she was guarding something. We've reviewed the draft, my mom said, first voice, trying to stay composed. I didn't respond. Attorney Sullivan flipped through the pages. The agreement states clearly, Mr. and Mrs. Doyle agreed to return the full amount of $18,000 misappropriated from Ms. Zoe Doyle's savings account, according to a 6-month repayment schedule with a low legal interest rate. They also agree not to access Mr. Ernest Doyle's accounts, assets, or medical records without written consent. My dad exhaled as if signing off on a death certificate for the world he had built on denial. My mom scanned each line, then signed without hesitation. As the pen hit the desk, I realized no one flinched. No theatrics. Just the silence of people being forced to look in the mirror. I collected the notarized copies and slid them into my file folder. Connor checked into Riverstone this morning. My dad blinked. He agreed, not because you talked him into it. Because almost dying finally taught him what a boundary feels like. My mom lowered her head. Her fingers twisted her wedding ring like searching for something in a memory that may no longer exist. The following week, I moved with Grandpa to a small apartment in North Portland. It was a 4-story building with an elevator and an on-site wellness center on the ground floor. His room had a window facing the park where kids laughed and chased each other in the morning sun. I helped him rearrange his bookshelf, hung the faded photo of him and Grandma on their wedding day, the colors worn down by time, but their eyes still held tenderness. One evening, as I rinsed a glass, he called softly, "Zoe." I stepped out of the kitchen. "Yes, Grandpa," he raised his teacup voice steady. "You know, there were times I thought Karen wasn't truly bad. Maybe she just learned the wrong way to love. I didn't answer right away, then placed my hand gently on his shoulder. And now we'll relearn. Together. One step at a time. He nodded. No smile, but I caught it in his eyes peace. 3 weeks passed and I received a letter from Riverstone. Connor was attending group therapy sessions regularly. He had been moved to the 2-month treatment program due to signs of progress. He hadn't called, but he had written one single line in the letter. I said out loud the names of the things I'm afraid of today. I didn't expect it to feel this light. I read it again and again in the hospital parking lot during my shift. The letter wasn't long, no clear roadmap, but there was no blame. No hiding. On a Sunday evening, I made tea and opened the window toward the street. The wind lightly stirred the curtains. There were no shouts, no one yelling at me to shut the door because of the power bill. No surprise calls asking for a transfer. I wouldn't call it happiness. Just this relief. Zoe's story is a powerful reminder that sometimes in order to protect what's right, you have to be the only one willing to stand up. When families fall apart from patterns of enabling and misuse, she didn't stay silent. She investigated, confronted, set boundaries, and took responsibility even when it wasn't hers to bear. In real life, many people like Zoe quietly endure until they can't anymore. But when they finally rise, they not only save themselves, they often heal what no one else dared to fix. What do you think about Zoe's choices and the way she faced her family? Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to follow this channel for more heartfelt, powerful stories about family sacrifice and the courage to draw the line.